Hi there, Alison here with another Cab Franc du jour. Today we are in Chinon and we're looking at the Olga Raffault 2018 Les Barnabés Chinon. Domaine Olga Raffault is unquestionably one of the benchmark producers in Chinon. They've been tending to vines on the Véron Peninsula for 5 generations. Today the domain is being run by Olga's granddaughter Sylvie, and recently Sylvie's son Arnaud joined the family business as well. They have 23 hectares of Cabernet Franc vines in 2 communes, Savigny-en-Véron and also Beaumont-en-Véron, and all their vines are farm certified organic. Today's wine, Les Barnabés, is one of 3 single vineyard Cabernet Francs that they make, the other 2 being Les Peuilles and also Les Picasses. Now, this lieu-dit is in the commune of Savigny-en-Véron, which makes up the Véron Peninsula along with the commune of Avoine. And essentially we're in the far northwest corner of the Chinon appellation. We have the Loire River running to the north, we have the Vienne River kind of running to the southwest, and essentially we're just before the Loire River takes a little bit of a dogleg at saumur-champigny. Now, this is also where the Vienne River tributary begins as well. And because of the proximity of these 2 rivers to this area, we do see a stronger moderating influence. In addition to that, because of the lower elevation, we can see some wintertime flooding as well. Now, where Barnabés is located, we're kind of like 2.5 kilometers or so northeast of the Vienne River and about 3 kilometers southeast of the Loire River. Now, in the Chinon appellation, there are 2 distinct areas of alluvial soils. As I've talked about in other videos, as we move further southeast down the Vienne River Valley into communes like Cabernet, we have the recent alluvial soils. These are sandy, gravelly soils that are sedimentary materials that were deposited via the flowing Vienne River. Now, here in Savigny-en-Véron, we also have alluvial soils, but these are river-derived sedimentary materials that were deposited via the Loire River rather than the Vienne, which makes them a little bit different in terms of their composition. Now, the bedrock here is actually different as well. There's a fault at Avoine, and it creates these 2 distinct areas of bedrock. So at Beaumont-en-Véron, and as we kind of move southeast down the Vienne River Valley, we are on the all-important Turonian tuffo chalky soils that I talk about all the time. But here in Savigny-en-Véron, we're actually on a slightly different bedrock. It's a combination of chalk, marl, and sandstone. It actually dates to the Cenomanian era, which makes them a little bit older, in fact, than the Turonian tuffo chalk bedrock of the rest of the appellation. Now, in terms of this parcel of vines, it's about 4 hectares or so, 35 or so years of age. And then in terms of the winemaking, this was vinified with the intention of sort of more early drinking style in terms of the profile. So we do have hand-picked fruit, destemmed, whole berry fermentation. The fermentation was done in stainless steel using indigenous yeast. It spent about 30 days or so on skins. And then the aging was also done in stainless steel as well for about 12 months before bottling. So let's get into it. Now, the nose does have this wonderful perfume to it, which I tend to get when I'm tasting Cab Franc that's coming from sandier sites, is there is a certain degree of lift and perfume to the nose. The fruits lean on the sort of sweeter side of the red fruit spectrum. I'm getting a little bit of raspberry. There's a bit of strawberry here too. But it does lean a little bit on the savory side. So the pyrazines are kind of coming through nicely with a bit of a mossy note, like that sort of forest floor thing happening, and a little bit of like a lovely rosemary element as well. And there's also this really distinctive tertiary layer to this wine, which I quite like sort of pencil shavings, a little bit of cocoa nibs too. The acidity is really persistent, lively, very fresh, and all those sort of sweet fruits come through beautifully on the palate as well. And there's a nice kind of tart red currant thing happening on the palate, which is nice because it adds a certain degree of levity to the sort of the whole palate profile. And all those tertiary elements come into play again, and I'm getting even a little bit of like a nice allspice note, which I really quite like. There's a really distinctive creaminess to the mid palate here, especially kind of in the middle core of the wine, which is really quite interesting. The tannins are relatively soft on the lower side, and they do have like a cashmere-like profile to me. There's a certain softness, but the weave of the tannins is quite uniform in that way, and they do kind of hug the tongue quite nicely. And there is a certain broadness to how the palate feels. You know, it's not between 2 railway tracks. This is a little bit sort of looser, more at ease, or if you will, in terms of how the tannin structure feels on the palate. overall, the profile of this wine is actually quite svelte. It's very lean. It has a certain degree of life profile, a certain degree of levity and sort of elegance and finesse to it. But at the same time, there's also depth here too, in terms of the depth of the fruit, the concentration of the fruit, and just how the tertiary elements are working in here, which is quite interesting because there's a lot going on in this rather sort of svelte, lean frame of this wine. And in addition to that, there's some nuance. There's a bit of sort of restraint here, which I really like, and it feels very traditional to me, sort of a nod to the past. Like there's this real kind of recognition of sort of what came before, which I quite like, but it's also refined at the same time. There's a lot going on here, but most distinctively, when I was making my notes earlier, I noted a certain connectedness that I felt with the site, in terms of like, I could see the vines, I could see the sandy soils. It's like I could see the Loire River off in the distance, as if the wine is a really strong mirror for this site. It feels very clear to me in that way, which is really, really quite profound, actually. If you've had this wine before, let me know what you thought of it in the comments below. And of course, as always, I will be back again soon with another wine. Cheers.